Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're grappling with a topic that is sparking, well, massive debate right across creative fields, particularly in film.
Yeah, artificial intelligence. Its role is just growing so fast in the arts.
Exactly. And you've shared some absolutely fascinating sources for us to dig into. There's a stack here that includes a really vibrant, sometimes pretty intense online conversation from Reddit,
Mm.
alongside these detailed reports on powerful new AI tools coming out of Google.
That's right. So our mission for this deep dive really is to navigate through all these different perspectives. We need to get to grips with the technology itself, the
Mm.
stuff at the heart of the discussion,
Right.
and figure out what this all might actually mean, not just for the creators and the industries, but, for how you experience stories in the future.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Jumping right into the sources, one of the things that immediately stood out were these concrete developments from Google. They unveiled some new AI-powered video tools at Google I/O 2025.
Absolutely. And one of the tools they introduced is specifically aimed at filmmakers, called Flow.
Flow. All right, tell us about Flow. What's it designed to do?
Well, think of Flow as a pretty comprehensive toolkit, I guess.
Yep.
It integrates several of Google's advanced AI models. There's Veo for generating video, Imagen for images,
Okay.
and Gemini for handling text and like the prompts you give it. The core idea is really to streamline the filmmaking process using AI.
Streamline, how? What kind of features are we talking about?
The sources highlight features like scene building, creating or importing characters, managing your assets, and even things like dynamic camera control.
Wow, okay, so it's moving beyond just generating a single clip and getting more into the actual, like, building blocks of a scene.
That seems to be the ambition, yeah, according to the sources.
Mm.
And a really key component within Flow is the latest version of their video model, VO3.
VO3. Got it. What's special about that?
Well, what's specifically noted about VO3 is its ability to generate videos with synchronized soundtracks.
Synchronized soundtracks. You mean like dialogue and effects?
Exactly. This isn't just adding a piece of music afterwards. The AI is apparently creating dialogue, sound effects, background noise,
Mm-hmm.
all lining up with the visuals it generates.
Hmm.
The sources pointed to this integrated audio capability as, well, a significant differentiator from some other AI video generators we've seen out there.
Wow. Synchronized audio baked right in. That definitely feels like a step change. Were there any features mentioned aimed at, say, helping identify content generated by AI? That's a big concern.
Yes, that was addressed. The sources mentioned that VO3 includes Synthy watermarking.
Synthede.
Yeah, the idea here is to embed these like invisible markers into the content. It's meant to help verify its authenticity later and potentially combat deepfakes.
Okay, built-in authenticity cues. That seems pretty important, especially considering all the deepfake concerns floating around.
Definitely.
Did Google just, cook this up in a lab somewhere, or did they involve actual creators?
According to the sources, Google presented Flow as an evolution of a previous project called Video FX,
Hmm.
and they really emphasized that it was built with creatives.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they even named specific filmmakers they collaborated with, like Dave Clark, Henry Dobré, and Junie Lau.
Okay.
These individuals reportedly provided feedback with the specific goal of ensuring Flow enhances human creativity rather than just, replacing it.
Right, that collaborative angle fits the whole AI as a tool narrative we'll definitely need to dive into later.
Exactly.
Anything else about the platform itself? Any other bells and whistles?
There's also mention of a platform within Flow, apparently called Flow TV. It's described as a place for users to showcase their creations and learn from others, specifically by seeing the prompts they used.
Ah, like a community showcase?
Sounds like it. They're trying to build a community around using the tool, it seems.
Interesting. Okay, so powerful tech, integrated features, that synchronized audio is huge, watermarking built with creatives. So how do you actually get your hands on this flow? And maybe the even bigger question, what's the price tag looking like?
Right, access and cost, always critical points, aren't they? According to the sources, Flow is initially available only in the US.
Ah, US only for now. Okay.
Correct. And access is through Google's AI Pro and AI Ultra subscription plans.
Subscription plans. Okay, makes sense. What are the tiers? What do you get?
Well, the AI Pro plan gives you the key flow features and comes with a limit of 100 generations per month.
100 generations. Okay. And for more power.
For higher usage or, more advanced features, you'd look at the AI Ultra plan.
And the Ultra plan provides, what's the extra juice there?
The AI Ultra plan offers significantly higher usage limits and, crucially, includes early access to that VO3 model, with the native audio generation capability we just talked about.
Got it. So the cutting edge stuff is in Ultra.
Mm.
And the cost for that Ultra tier, did the sources mention a number?
They did. The specific cost mentioned in the sources for the AI Ultra plan is $249.99 per month.
Wow. Okay. $249.99 a month.
Yeah,
That's a significant investment.
it absolutely is. And the sources specifically highlight this high cost as a potential barrier, especially for, independent creators and smaller studios who often operate on much tighter budgets.
Yeah, I can see that.
It immediately raises questions about how much this technology truly democratizes filmmaking if the top-tier access is that expensive. As one source put it, it could easily create a very sort of divided landscape.
That significant cost really highlights the divided views we saw popping up throughout the sources, doesn't it? On one hand, you have people seeing AI as this powerful new tool,
Right.
but then there's this stark reality of the potential cost and who can actually access it. Let's dive into those diverse perspectives now because it's really clear there isn't a single simple answer to what AI means for the arts.
Absolutely not. You see a huge range of viewpoints, often expressed with, well, a lot of passion, sometimes a lot of anxiety too.
Let's start with what we could call the AI as a tool or enhancer view. What did the sources saying that generally point to?
Okay, so this perspective sees AI primarily as a powerful assistant. It's there to automate what some sources call the boring, brainless bits of creative jobs.
Oh, the boring, brainless bits, like,
They gave examples like rotoscoping, which, can be incredibly repetitive,
oh yeah, tedious.
or quickly creating basic 3D assets. One user joked about prompting like, AI, make me a 3D apple with a bite mark, stuff like that.
Okay, automating tedious tasks. That makes sense from an efficiency standpoint, sure.
Right. The core idea here is that by taking care of these more mundane tasks, AI could potentially free up human artists and filmmakers for more genuinely creative, imaginative work.
Right, focus on the bigger picture.
Exactly. This viewpoint suggests AI will be used by professionals as a helping hand for things like, say, retouching backgrounds, generating initial ideas like quick plot summaries, or testing out sitcom concepts, or maybe enabling indie filmmakers with limited resources to achieve results they just couldn't before.
So it's less about AI doing the job instead of you, and more about AI doing certain tasks for you so you can focus on the higher level creative stuff.
Precisely. That idea was really captured by a phrase that popped up a few times in the sources. An AI won't take your job, someone using it will.
Right. Adaptation is key.
Yeah, it emphasizes adaptation and learning how to wield these new tools effectively. There was even a mention that the Academy's recent stance, being generally okay with AI use in films as long as it meets certain criteria, could be seen as Hollywood starting to recognize AI as a legitimate tool in the artist's hands.
Okay, so that's the optimistic side, AI as a partner, an enhancer. But the sources also presented a very strong, sometimes quite anxious AI as a threat view. What are the main concerns there?
The primary concern, and it's a really significant one raised repeatedly, is job displacement. Pure and simple.
Which jobs?
Well, the fears seem particularly high for junior or entry-level positions. The argument is that if those repetitive foundational tasks get automated,
The boring, brainless bits.
exactly, if those get automated, it could drastically shrink the pool of talent entering the industry. It can make it much harder for people to gain the experience needed to develop into senior roles later on.
So it's not just about losing current jobs, but potentially undermining the future pipeline of talent for the entire industry. That's sobering.
Precisely. And this anxiety isn't confined just to filmmaking either. Sources linked it to broader automation trends, expressing fears for writers, VFX artists. They even drew parallels to potential job losses for truck drivers because of self-driving tech.
It's part of the bigger picture.
Yeah. And there's also deep skepticism about AI's actual creative capacity. It was described by some as lacking soul or genuine understanding or true originality.
Lacking soul.
Yeah. Users shared frustrating experiences with AI writing being, frankly, garbage or making things up randomly or really struggling with specificity. Some compared it unfavorably to, like, sixth grade writing or something a middle schooler might produce.
So it can maybe mimic patterns okay, but it struggles with the nuance and the genuine spark of creativity. Is that the idea?
That's a core part of that critique, yes. Another major driver of the threat view is just the sheer rapid pace of AI development. People feel like things are changing almost daily.
Yeah, it does feel incredibly fast.
Users noted how quickly AI image generation went from creating slightly strange, kind of psychedelic dreams to producing eerily realistic humans in just a matter of months. That feeling of the goalpost constantly moving
Yeah.
and moving fast left many feeling overwhelmed and just unable to adapt quickly enough.
That sense of the ground constantly shifting under your feet must be incredibly unsettling for people whose livelihoods depend on these specific skills.
Absolutely. And coupled with that is the fear that studios, driven primarily by maximizing short-term profits, will use AI to automate more than just the grunt tasks. They might automate significant portions of the creative process and potentially then pay less for human work, for instance.
Yeah.
Maybe hiring writers just to fix a badly written AI script instead of paying them the full rate to write it from scratch.
Oof. Okay, so it sounds like the fear is AI being used not just as a tool for efficiency, but as a tool to potentially devalue human creative labor itself.
That's a major undercurrent, yes.
Beyond the immediate job debate, the sources also touched on some really fundamental, broader implications and ethical questions. Big stuff.
Yeah, this is where the conversation moves into territory about the very foundations of creative work. A central ethical debate that came up repeatedly is about how these AI models are actually trained.
Right, the data.
Exactly. Sources argued pretty strongly that AI is trained on massive amounts of existing data, including copyrighted work, often without consent or compensation to the original creators.
Hmm.
Some felt this was, and I'm quoting here, directly and purposely stolen from artists, and that AI developers made a deliberate choice not to build in ethical safeguards from the start.
So, for some people, it's not just a technical problem, like an oversight, but a deliberate ethical failure by the companies building the AI.
That's certainly one forceful viewpoint presented in the sources, yes. There was discussion about whether scraping existing data violates current law, or if IP law simply hasn't caught up and needs to be, expanded.
How could it be expanded? Were there suggestions?
Some sources suggested potential models, like maybe allowing the scraping, but preventing AI-generated content from receiving copyright itself, unless there's significant human input. They drew comparisons to how libraries have to pay for their collections, or how you pay residuals, or give credit for cover songs.
That library or cover song comparison is quite a strong analogy, actually.
It is. And this ties into a more philosophical debate that also
Huh.
came up in the sources about authenticity and soul.
Right. Can AI really create art, or is it just incredibly sophisticated pattern matching and sort of remixing existing styles?
Exactly. That question came up quite a bit. Interestingly, though, some sources push back on the idea that only human art has soul.
Oh, how so?
They argue that a lot of current mainstream Hollywood output already feels soulless and formulaic, regardless of AI involvement.
Ouch.
Yeah. They cited examples like the recent White Men Can't Jump remake as a human-made film that, in their view, lacks soul.
That's a pretty tough critique of the current state of the industry itself. And that lack of soul point leads to another potential negative that was mentioned, homogenization.
Right. The concern is that if everyone starts using similar, powerful AI models, the resulting content could start to look and feel the same.
Yeah, kind of creative monoculture.
It might lack originality, leading to a homogenization of style across films and potentially diluting unique artistic voices and emotional depth.
And who ultimately controls this powerful new technology? Was that discussed?
That's another major point of discussion, yes. The source have contrasted the power wielded by large corporations like Google and OpenAI with the potential of open source AI development.
Open source versus big tech.
Exactly. Some sources argued that open source is currently, and this was the phrase, kicking big companies' ass in terms of innovation speed. They argued that this technology is simply too powerful to be controlled by just a few multi-billion-dollar corporations.
Hmm.
They questioned the idea of trusting figures like, Zuckerberg, Bezos, and Musk with that kind of control over the future of creative tools.
So a push for a more decentralized AI future then. That makes sense. We also touched on the high cost of tools like Flow Ultra earlier.
Yes, and that $249.99 price point links directly into a potential increase in the economic divide.
Right.
That cost could significantly widen the gap between well-funded major studios and independent creators working with much tighter budgets. It could create that divided landscape we talked about, where only those with significant resources can afford access to the cutting edge of these tools.
Yeah.
It certainly fits into a broader concern about, the rich getting richer, essentially.
This isn't the first time a disruptive technology has entered creative industries, or any industry, really. The sources drew quite a few historical parallels, didn't they?
Many comparisons were made, yeah. The printing press displacing scribes, the power loom impacting home weaving, automation changing factory jobs.
CGI versus practical effects.
Right, CGI affecting practical effects artists, calculators replacing human computers back in the day, and even the current concerns about self-driving tech and truck drivers.
So were people saying creatives resisting AI are just being Luddites?
Some sources definitely framed it that way, suggesting they were trying to stop inevitable progress. But importantly, the sources also countered that by pointing out that past technological shifts did absolutely eliminate careers. It wasn't always a smooth transition,
Right.
and adapting isn't always easy or even possible, especially maybe for older workers who might have spent decades honing a very specific skill that could now be automated away relatively quickly.
Yeah, that's a crucial point. It highlights that while technology often creates new kinds of jobs in the long run, the transition itself is rarely without significant disruption and hardship for specific groups of workers.
Exactly. It's a complex historical picture, not simply a binary good or bad outcome. There are always winners and losers in these shifts.
Let's circle back to that pretty provocative point raised multiple times in the sources, particularly in those Reddit discussions. Is Hollywood already soulless?
Yes, this was a recurring and, well, pretty strong theme. The argument was that the quality of mainstream Hollywood output has already declined significantly
Mm-hmm.
due to factors largely unrelated to AI. Things like a perceived over-reliance on poor CGI, formulaic writing driven by market research instead of, creative vision.
Playing it safe.
Yeah, and a focus on safe, unoriginal content designed to appeal to the lowest common denominator, basically.
They felt that current films are often seen as, quote, watered down garbage, or frankly, might as well be AI. That's pretty damning.
It is. Precisely. The implication being that if the output is already seen by some as lacking soul or originality, then maybe AI taking over might not make things noticeably worse.
Uh,
Or, perhaps optimistically for some, it could push truly creative talent out of the major studio system and towards the independent scene, where there might be more freedom from those commercial pressures.
mhm.
One source even mentioned, neutrally of course, a discussion point from another source, about a politician's idea of using tariffs on foreign films to help Hollywood,
Right.
which just underscores that the sources themselves saw issues with the industry that went way beyond just the threat of AI.
It's a fascinating and pretty harsh critique of the existing state of filmmaking, suggesting AI is entering an ecosystem that already has significant perceived flaws.
It really grounds the AI discussion in the current realities of the industry, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Rather than treating AI in isolation.
So, okay, we've seen powerful new AI tools like Google's Flow and Veo 3 emerging. They're designed to integrate deeply into the filmmaking process, offering capabilities like that synchronized audio, and seemingly aiming to make creation easier, faster, maybe more accessible if you ignore the price for a second.
Right, and at the very same time, we have heard these passionate arguments drawn straight from the source material about the very real threats to jobs, the deep epical quandaries of training AI on existing creative work without consent,
Hmm.
and these fundamental questions about whether AI can truly replicate the unique human elements of creativity, of understanding of that soul people talked about.
It really seems like AI in filmmaking isn't just a simple question of technology or efficiency, is it? It's one that forces us to confront these fundamental questions about the value we place on human labor, the very nature of art itself, and ultimately, who benefits from technological advancement in creative fields.
Yeah, absolutely. Which raises an important, maybe slightly uncomfortable question to end on. Considering the rapid pace of AI development we discussed and the economic pressures already weighing on studios, what happens if AI-generated films become not just passable, but genuinely preferred by large audiences, regardless of how they were made or, who made them?
Here's where it gets really interesting. Is, as one source rather pointedly put it, the audience simply doesn't care how the sausage is made. Does that fundamentally change the arguments about the inherent value of human creative labor? Something for you to definitely mull over.